Hey guys, so shock upon shock, I am here with another romance review. And because I'm me, I'm going to review an entire series of books because when I am stressed, I read, and when I don't sleep, I read, and I have not been sleeping and I've been very stressed, so I've been reading. So, one of the things that happens when I start to binge romance novels is I get really attached to a certain trope. And sometimes I realize I'm doing it and sometimes I don't. So lately, for example, I've been really obsessed with second chance romances. And that was a trope that I knew that I was kind of following. Something that happened recently is I started to binge billionaire romances, which is almost always, the normal girl is swept off her feet by a dude who's a billionaire and she's got something going on in her life that, he can save her from with all his money, and he is normally just kind of like a workaholic who needs, normalcy in his life. And if it sounds like I'm being disparaging about this trope, I am. It's not my favorite. But I've been reading a lot of it because sometimes you just gotta read them trashy romances to make yourself feel better. So no shame, no shade. I still don't like it, but I've been reading it. And so I want to tell you guys today about a series that I've read over a period of time. There's been a new book just released in this series that I think is a Billionaire series that is a cut above the rest. And that is The Billionaires of Manhattan by Annika Martin. This is currently a 6-book series. Like I said, the 6th book just came out a month or two ago. And it is very silly. It is kind of hard when, the billionaire kind of set up, there's only so many things that you can do. And I think while not every book here is interesting, above and beyond, and they're certainly not the best written books I've ever read, they come with these very cute little, setups that just make them super adorable and a cut above some of the more tried and true storylines you can get elsewhere. So, without further ado. The first book is called The Most Eligible Billionaire. This is the story of Vicky, a girl who dreams on making her Etsy store big. Her Etsy store does stuff for, unique stuff for pets, particularly dogs, and she ends up having this customer who really likes her stuff, and she walks her dog, and then this mysterious old lady dies and bequeaths Vicky her dog Smuckers. Turns out this old lady is the scion of the Locke Foundation. The Locke Foundation is, a billionaire entity in Manhattan, and this old lady has made her dog Smuckers the biggest shareholder in the Locke Foundation. And as Smucker's guardian, Vicky is now essentially gone from being a woman who wants to run an Etsy store to essentially the leader of a billionaire corporation. It's a big life change. Needless to say, the grandson, his name is Henry, he is not having it. He plans to inherit the entire company, he has big plans, and he wants Vicky and Smuckers out of the equation. And so what begins to happen is, Henry can't get rid of Smuckers. Vicky loves Smuckers and thinks that Henry is a piece of really moody awful. And they begin to basically go to war with each other in the most passive-aggressive way possible. One of my favorite scenes is when Vicky, trying to make a point, creates a throne for Smuckers, which is this most ornate pink glitter monstrosity that she insists be sat at the top of the conference table that Smuckers sits upon. It's so silly. I do love me a good enemies to lovers romance, and that is exactly what this is, with, shades of this weird war that they're having. It's not my favorite book of the series. I think I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, but it's the kind of silly that you see, you kind of see where the series is going. Book 2 is the only book in this series I've actually reread. So I probably have to say that it's my favorite one, but it's also the one with the silliest setup, I think. And it is called The Billionaires Wake Up Call Girl. And so this is the story of Lizzie, who does social media stuff, which, hey, I do too. And she gets a job at a medical manufacturing company run by this like billionaire super genius named Theo. And Theo is very focused on the product. He does not understand humanity, essentially. And so when Lizzie comes to him with this super like fun, humanistic, humanizing social media campaign for his company, he's like, no. Where are the beakers? Where's the science? So needless to say, they do not get off on the right foot. Theo asks Lizzie's boss to find him a wake-up call company because apparently he can't use an alarm clock. This is very weak setup. I don't know why an alarm clock doesn't work for this dude. But anyway, Lizzie can't find anyone to wake him up, and so she starts doing it herself. Except the first call is kind of an accident where her friend dials his number and she thinks that he has joke dialed Theo's number, and so she basically wakes him up by saying, "Hey, asshole." And it kind of goes downhill from there. But needless to say, they acquire an attraction to each other over the phone. Theo has a case of mistaken identity when he tries to find his call girl, phone operator. Call girl is a prostitute, but that is what he calls her. Whatever. Again, it's a very, very silly setup, but I did like the fact that they started to fall in love and become attracted to each other over the phone. It was just very cutesy and again, very silly. And yeah, I reread it because I found it so silly and I enjoyed the build up to their relationship. So take from that what you will. Oh wait, that's not true. So I've actually also reread book 3, which is Breaking the Billionaires' Rules. Again, wildly redonkulous setup. So the girl in this one, her name is Mia, and she is a employee at a company that delivers lunches to people in office buildings in New York City. Except for they are dressed up as cats. So she has to wear like cat ears and a little like cat apron, and it's like a whole like cat suit. It's weird, and I'm pretty sure that if you actually did that in New York, you would end up having to like file a harassment suit against at least one person. But anyway, Mia goes to deliver lunch to this one building and finds out that it is the building of her high school nemesis, Max Hilton, who has become a billionaire by writing this book that is basically all about how to lie to women to seduce them, essentially. And Mia decides to reignite their feud because she thinks that Max has called her to his office to demean her by delivering his food in this cat costume. So she decides to use his book on seducing women against him and see if she can use all of his tricks to humiliate him instead of the other way around. It is, again, ridiculously silly, but it is kind of fun to watch how like they both have a plan going into their interactions and it falls apart every single time. And they both give as good as they get, and it's another wonderful enemies to lovers situation. And it's really silly, and I've reread it, so there you go. So book 4, I think, might be the weakest of the bunch, just because it's the one with the most traditional setup, I think, and also it's the one that uses a trope that I don't particularly like, and it's The Billionaire's Fake Fiance. You may guess from the title that the setup here is that a billionaire needs a fake fiance, and you would be correct. So in this one, there is Rex and Tabitha. So Tabitha is Rex's hairstylist, and she is everything Rex is not. She's very bubbly, she's very lovely, she's very friendly, and Rex is very stoic and moody and all that jazz. And he needs a fake fiance to close a business deal. Again, this is, I think, the weakest one because this is a billionaire romance plotline that I've read like hundreds of times. maybe not hundreds, but it just feels like this is a very common setup for these billionaire romances. I'm not saying that it's bad. I just feel like in a sea of books where there's a really more interesting setups, this one leans back on tradition a little bit more. And so if you like fake fiance books, it's very funny, it's very sweet, it's very lovely, but it just lacks the giggly silliness of some of the other setups that I've described. So book 5 is called Return Billionaire to Sender. And so while this hasn't really been relevant before, these books are connected because a lot of the women live in the same apartment building. And in book 5, there is a billionaire who buys the apartment building and decides that he wants to tear it down, turn it condo, and kick everybody who lives there out, essentially. By this point, a lot of the women that we've come to know and love have moved out and in with their billionaire lovers who, for whatever reason, do not step in on this one, but I digress. Again, you have to turn off your brain a little bit for the silliness to hit you. But this one is about Noelle. Noelle is a mail carrier, and Malcolm, who is the aforementioned billionaire who wants to kick everybody out of this building. And Noelle comes up with this idea that she is literally going to kill Malcolm with kindness. She does this huge letter campaign, this huge video campaign, essentially just continuing to show up where Malcolm least expects her and trying to convince him through the goodness of his heart not to do it. Again, it's a little bit of a weird setup, but because Noelle is so sweet, I didn't really like Malcolm, I'm gonna be honest with you, but Noelle is such a fun character and the setup is so funky. And as a mail carrier, she's like, I can get anywhere if I just put my postal service costume on and everyone will just let me go. Which I think is actually true. If you saw a postal worker, you'd be like, yes, they're delivering mail. I don't know why they are personally delivering this letter to this office, but sure, that's what the mail does. So again, this one has, I think, one of the weaker setups because there are a lot of holes you can poke into it. But again, I think Noelle absolutely saves this book and it's really, really sweet. So the final book right now in this series that just came out is called Just Not That Into Billionaires. And the female character in this, her name is Francine, and she has showed up in various other books being like, how do y'all keep finding billionaires? Can no one just date a regular person? Like, what is happening in this building right now? Like, where did they all come from? And so she is a dancer and she has just been offered basically the tour of a lifetime as one of the star ballerinas. And she goes to apply for a visa to go to Europe and finds out that she's married. And she hasn't known she's been married for about 10 years. And she accidentally, apparently 10 years ago in Vegas when she was working on a Cirque du Soleil show, married the lighting and sound guy, who they absolutely had a very contentious relationship. But they had one drunken night in Vegas and they got married. And since that time, this sound and lights guy named Benny has started his own tech company and is now, you guessed it, a billionaire. Shocking, I know. So Francine, or Franny, goes to see him and she's like, hey man, I know you hate me, but apparently we're married. Isn't that weird? And Benny goes, I know. I wasn't so drunk that I forgot. I've been waiting for you to come find me. And after all of these years of assuming that Francine knew they were married and just abandoned him, he's got some anger management issues to work out. And so he says that he will only divorce her if she plays his, well, not really plays, acts as his wife to help close this business deal. Which I know sounds like a fake fiance thing, but the thing here is that A, they are actually married, and B, the world knows that Benny is married, they just don't know who he's married to. And for whatever reason, people have decided that he has kept his wife locked in a chalet in Switzerland because reasons. It's like a Mr. Rochester thing. And because Francine has no choice but to go along with this, but really doesn't, she shows up to the first business dinner in a Sound of Music dirndl. with her hair in a bun, talking about that Swiss chalet she's been in for the last 10 years. And the shenanigans continue from there. So I thought that this setup was going to be kind of boring, but Francine and Benny really sell it. And it was just really funny and really silly. So out of all of the Billionaire books that I've been reading recently, these are just, again, they're not gonna blow you away with their writing. They're not gonna, you know, be the best thing you read this year. But out of all of the Billionaire books that I've been reading, these are just so sweet and so funny and so spicy, and just, they have a lot of the things that I love in my, you know, silly romance reading. And I read a lot of these a while ago, and they still really stick out to me as just really, really fun reads. So I wanted to share them with you, and while you don't have to read them in order, I do think that you should, because it makes the most sense that way. But if one of them sounds more interesting to you than others, just go ahead and start there and see if this is something that's for you. If you've already read any of these, let me know down in the comments. If you have other Billionaire books that you think I should look into, or just other romances in general, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Bye!